Jessica always trusted Mark, her husband of 10 years. But one night, a hidden box in their home revealed a secret so dark it shattered everything she thought she knew about him. Jessica had always believed she knew her husband, Mark, better than anyone else in the world. They had met in college, a time full of laughter and late-night conversations, and their connection had seemed unbreakable. After years of dating, they had built a life together in a quiet, suburban neighborhood, surrounded by friendly neighbors and manicured lawns. To everyone who knew them, their life looked perfect. Mark was the kind of man people admired, polite, hard-working, and reliable. He held a stable job as a software engineer, a career that demanded focus and long hours, but he always seemed to make time for Jessica. He brought flowers on random days, remembered small details about her favorite things, and offered comfort when she needed it. From the outside, their marriage appeared to be the kind that many people envied. Yet over the past few months, Jessica had started noticing cracks in the carefully maintained facade. It began with small details, the kind that were easy to dismiss at first. Bills arrived with unfamiliar charges, addressed to names she didn't recognize. Packages showed up on their doorstep with no sender information, and when she asked about them, Mark offered vague explanations and quickly changed the subject. His phone was always locked, even when they were home together, and he would become defensive if she tried to glance at it. Jessica found herself replaying conversations in her head, remembering subtle lies or inconsistencies in his stories. Each time, a flicker of doubt crossed her mind, but she forced herself to push it away, blaming her imagination or stress from work. Still, unease began to grow. She started noticing little things around the house, small stains that didn't belong, items that had been moved, and odd sounds that seemed to come from the office when Mark wasn't around. Her instincts, which had rarely been wrong in the past, whispered that something was off. She tried to rationalize it, telling herself that everyone had secrets, that maybe Mark's work required him to handle sensitive information, or that stress could make anyone act strangely. Yet, the feeling wouldn't leave her. It followed her like a shadow, lingering in the corners of their home, in quiet moments when she was alone, and even when Mark was beside her, smiling and holding her hand. Jessica's sense of unease intensified when she found herself paying closer attention to his habits. Mark's late-night trips to the office seemed more frequent, and sometimes he returned home looking unusually tense, like he was carrying a burden he couldn't share. He had always been private, but now secrecy felt heavier, almost threatening. Jessica realized that she no longer felt the comfort she once did in their home. Instead, a cold uncertainty had settled in. She felt like an outsider in her own life, watching the man she loved from a distance she couldn't bridge. Each day, the sense of doubt gnawed at her, growing stronger and more insistent. It was a quiet terror, subtle, but impossible to ignore. One evening, as Jessica lay in bed watching Mark sleep, she stared at his face, searching for a clue in his expression, a crack in the mask he wore every day. His breathing was steady, untroubled, completely ordinary, yet the unease inside her refused to dissipate. She realized she had reached a point where ignoring her instincts was no longer an option. Something about Mark's life, something hidden, something he would never willingly share, was waiting to be uncovered. And Jessica knew, deep down, that once she started looking for the truth, nothing would ever feel the same again. The perfect life she had believed in was no longer a certainty, and the fear of what she might discover pressed heavily against her chest. That evening, when Mark was away on one of his frequent business trips, Jessica found herself unable to sleep. The nagging feeling of unease that had been growing inside her reached a tipping point. She walked through the quiet house, her steps careful, almost hesitant, as if the walls themselves might betray her presence. The dim glow from the hallway light fell across the floor, casting long shadows that seemed to shift with every movement. Her eyes drifted toward the office, a room Mark always insisted was off-limits to her. Normally, she had respected his boundaries, but tonight curiosity overpowered caution. Something inside her demanded she uncover the truth, no matter how horrifying it might be. She entered the office quietly and noticed the faint hum of the computer, still running in screensaver mode. Papers were stacked neatly on the desk, folders aligned with meticulous care. Most of it was mundane, work-related documents. But then her eyes fell on a small, unmarked box tucked under a pile of folders. It was plain, inconspicuous, almost as if it were meant to be hidden. Her hands trembled as she lifted it out, and a chill ran down her spine. The lock had long been removed, and the lid gave way with a quiet creak. Inside, she found a series of photographs that made her stomach knot and her pulse spike. The images were of strangers, captured in private moments that no one should ever witness. Some were taken in homes, others in public places, but all were intimate and invasive, frozen in time without consent. Her heart pounded as she flipped through them, each photograph revealing a layer of darkness she could never have imagined. There were more than 100 pictures, and each one seemed more disturbing than the last. Jessica's mind struggled to comprehend the reality. The man she loved, the man she thought she knew, had been secretly observing these people. Her hands shook as she opened Mark's computer, instinctively trying to find the source of the photographs. She discovered encrypted files, carefully labeled with dates, locations, and names. Some files contained journals and notes detailing his obsessions, the routines of his victims, and methods he had used to avoid detection. Jessica felt a cold, sinking feeling in her chest. Every detail suggested meticulous planning, a calculated obsession that had been hidden for months, possibly years. She realized the scope of his actions might be far more extensive than she had feared. As she delved deeper, she noticed patterns, addresses that matched people in their neighborhood, notes about their daily routines, and observations that were almost frighteningly precise. The meticulousness of it all made her heart race. She thought of their neighbors, friends, and even people she had casually interacted with over the years, wondering if any of them had unknowingly been targeted. The realization hit her with a force that left her dizzy. Mark had been living a double life, carefully constructing a hidden world that no one could see. Jessica stepped back from the desk, her mind spinning with disbelief, fear, and confusion. She felt trapped between the life she had always known and the terrifying truth she had uncovered. The house, once a place of comfort and safety, now felt suffocating, filled with secrets that threatened to destroy everything. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow in the corners seemed to whisper of the horrors that had been unfolding right under her nose. She understood, with a clarity that was both chilling and liberating, that the next step she took would change her life forever. Jessica could no longer ignore the horrifying reality she had uncovered. Mark was not the man she had believed him to be, and the life they had shared was a carefully constructed illusion. Fear gripped her, twisting her stomach into knots, but alongside it grew a fierce determination. She knew that simply walking away or pretending nothing had happened was no longer an option. The photographs, the encrypted files, and the detailed journals pointed to a darkness that had been festering beneath the surface for years, and she felt an urgent need to understand the full extent of it. Every fiber of her being screamed that more lives might be at risk, and she could not allow that to happen. She began meticulously documenting everything she had found. Using her phone, she photographed the files, the journals, and the computer screens, careful to leave no trace that she had been inside Mark's office. She copied the encrypted folders onto a secure external drive, checking each one to ensure the files were intact. Her hands shook constantly, and every small noise, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic outside, made her jump. The house felt suddenly alien, like a trap rather than a home, and the quiet that had once been comforting now pressed down on her with oppressive weight. Jessica traced some of the addresses Mark had recorded in his notes. She learned that several of the people he had been watching lived just blocks away. She could picture him following them, memorizing their routines, learning when they left for work, when they returned home, and what they did in private moments. The thought made her shiver uncontrollably. She imagined the possibility of Mark having been so close to their neighbors without anyone suspecting a thing. It was terrifying to realize that the man she shared her life with had been living among ordinary people, while simultaneously observing them in ways that were deeply invasive and criminal. As she delved deeper into the files, she discovered patterns that made her stomach turn. Some victims had been monitored for weeks, others for months, with Mark documenting every detail obsessively. There were lists, diagrams, and even sketches that suggested a careful, calculated approach to his obsessions. Jessica realized that she had stumbled onto something far more organized and deliberate than she had ever imagined. The man she loved was methodical, patient, and sinister. She struggled to reconcile the image of the Mark she knew with the man revealed in these documents. Every night, Jessica lay awake, haunted by what she had seen. Sleep offered no refuge, only a replay of images, addresses, and notes. She began to feel trapped in her own home, constantly aware that the walls themselves seemed to hold the weight of Mark's secret life. Her fear was compounded by the knowledge that confronting him directly could be dangerous, but inaction was no longer safe either. Every day, the burden grew heavier, and she knew she had to find a way to protect herself and possibly others. The horrifying truth was clear. Mark's obsession was not a phase, not a momentary lapse, but a calculated, ongoing pattern. The discovery left her reeling, caught between terror, disbelief, and a fierce resolve to see justice done. Jessica spent the next morning in a state of tense deliberation, knowing she could no longer handle the situation alone. She had gathered enough evidence to prove Mark's secret life, but the danger he posed loomed over her like a storm cloud. Each step she took in the house felt calculated, as though she were navigating a trap laid out by the man she had once trusted completely. Her heart pounded as she made the decision to contact law enforcement anonymously, unsure of what would happen once they became involved. She left a detailed message explaining what she had found, providing locations, and describing the encrypted files and photographs. The weight of the truth pressed on her, but the act of reaching out gave her a sliver of relief. Detectives arrived quietly, moving with precision through the house. Jessica watched as they carefully examined the office, the computer, and the hidden box she had discovered. They worked methodically, taking photographs, documenting evidence, and securing the digital files. Each movement they made confirmed her fears, showing her the extent of the darkness that had been lurking behind Mark's calm exterior. The officers spoke in hushed tones, but Jessica could see the seriousness in their expressions, the recognition that what she had uncovered was far beyond an ordinary crime. The investigation quickly revealed more than she had imagined. Hidden cameras were discovered in various parts of the house, some cleverly disguised as everyday objects. The journals and notes detailed Mark's obsessions in frightening detail, outlining patterns of stalking and surveillance that had gone unnoticed by everyone around him. The detectives explained that the encrypted files on the computer contained information on multiple potential victims, some of whom had been unaware of the danger lurking so close to their lives. The reality of the situation hit Jessica with full force. The man she had married had been living a double life, his calculated actions hidden in plain sight, and the consequences of his obsession could have been devastating. As the hours passed, Jessica felt a mix of terror and cautious relief. The presence of law enforcement provided a sense of protection, but it also forced her to confront the magnitude of betrayal she had endured. Mark's meticulous planning, his ability to maintain a facade of normalcy, and his hidden obsessions made her realize how little she had truly known him. The house, which had once been a place of warmth and security, now felt alien, filled with reminders of the crimes that had been unfolding right under her nose. Every detail, from the photographs to the hidden cameras, reinforced the fact that her life had been intertwined with someone capable of calculating cruelty. Detectives assured Jessica that steps were being taken to secure the evidence and begin a wider investigation, tracing potential victims and confirming the scope of Mark's actions. While the immediate threat to her safety was addressed, the emotional toll weighed heavily. She struggled with the realization that the life she had built, the trust she had placed in her husband, and the community she had believed to be safe were all built on lies. Each moment in that house was a reminder of how easily appearances could conceal darkness. Jessica felt a deep, lingering unease, knowing that even though the authorities were now involved, the memory of Mark's secret life would continue to haunt her long after the investigation ended. Mark returned from his trip, unaware that his carefully constructed world was collapsing around him as he walked through the door. The house felt different, tense, silent, charged with an invisible weight that he could not name. Jessica stood in the living room, her hands clasped tightly, her expression unreadable. She had prepared herself for this moment, but nothing could have fully steeled her for the confrontation that was about to unfold. Within minutes, law enforcement arrived, moving quickly and efficiently. Officers entered the home, their presence filling every corner with authority and inevitability. Mark was taken into custody without incident, a strange calm settling over him even as the truth he had worked so hard to conceal was laid bare. Jessica watched as the man she had loved was led away, handcuffed and silent. Relief mingled with a deep, aching sadness, a complex web of emotions that left her feeling unmoored. Investigators began cataloging and securing the evidence she had discovered, piecing together the timeline of Mark's secret life. Hidden cameras, journals, and encrypted files revealed a pattern of obsession that spanned years. Authorities explained that his activities had remained hidden because of his meticulous planning, his ability to blend seamlessly into ordinary life, and the care with which he had avoided leaving traces. The full scale of his actions left Jessica reeling, a mixture of horror and disbelief settling over her like a shadow. The detectives revealed that some of Mark's potential victims had been unaware of the danger he posed, while others had unknowingly been observed and documented in ways that would haunt them if ever revealed. Jessica learned that her quick action in gathering evidence and alerting authorities had prevented further harm, a fact that brought a measure of solace amid the turmoil. She thought of the neighbors, friends, and acquaintances whose lives had intersected with Mark's in ways they could never have anticipated. The realization that she had played a critical role in preventing additional crimes filled her with both pride and sorrow, a heavy weight that she carried silently. In the days that followed, Jessica struggled to reclaim a sense of normalcy. Every corner of the house reminded her of Mark's duplicity, every photograph, every note, and every hidden device a testament to the life he had led in secret. The quiet neighborhood felt changed, ordinary streets now charged with the memory of what had been uncovered. Jessica found herself grappling with betrayal, grief, and fear, but also with a determination to move forward. She began to make decisions with care, considering her safety and the protection of her privacy, while slowly reclaiming control over her life. Though the arrest brought legal closure, the emotional aftermath was complex. Jessica realized that trust, once broken in such a profound way, could never be fully restored. The man she had married, the life she had imagined, and the sense of security she had taken for granted were gone, replaced by the stark reality of Mark's hidden darkness. Yet amid the fear and heartbreak, a quiet strength emerged. Jessica understood that she had survived something unimaginable, that she had faced betrayal and terror with courage, and that she had preserved not only her own safety but potentially the lives of others. The life she rebuilt would carry scars, but it would also carry the resilience of someone who had confronted the unimaginable and endured.